Hello, and welcome to the Retirement Roadmap Show. I'm your host, Dave Negi, and in the studio today we have our co-host Tony Shore. Hey, how you doing, Tony?
Oh, Dave, come on. You are a madman. When you were younger and you and your friends went cow tipping, Dave, you are crazy. I'm
I
just
never had
kidding.
I never had the guts to get into a field with a bunch of
No.
cows, but
You don't want to get
can you
stepped
even
on.
really tip a cow, Tony?
Not
Is it even
really.
possible?
No, not really. It's kind of an old wives' tale that they
Isn't that
sleep standing up
an
and
urban
that
myth?
you can push them over. Um, well, I'll tell you, there are fainting goats though. Before we get into the show and the good financial information, I grew up on a farm and my mom had a llama, a couple goats, and 3 or 4 horses, and we had a fainting goat, and if you walked up behind it or beside it and could scare it just right, it
Yeah.
would go completely stiff and tip over as stiff as a board, just
Oh,
boom.
wow.
It
I've
would
seen
just
the
straight
videos of that. It's
boom.
it's crazy.
Yeah,
I've
it's
seen
not
where
good
like
for them, you
well, great.
know.
So you're torturing the poor goat.
Yeah, we've did it a couple of times just
Oh,
to,
sure, just a couple.
for the
Ah,
kids, you know what I mean, for
yeah,
the
oh,
kids.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Anyway, how you doing, my friend?
poor guy. I am doing great. How are you doing today, Dave?
I'm doing fabulous,
Excellent. Excellent.
fabulous.
Excellent. Well, you've got a great topic for us today.
Yeah,
How much do you really need to retire comfortably? And I like you added the word comfortably in there because it's one thing to retire. Anyone can retire. I mean, I could retire tomorrow,
yeah.
right? Uh, I could, but it might not be the best idea. It might not last too long. So I've still got a ways to go, I think. But how much do you need to retire comfortably? I think that's a question most of our listeners at some point are going to ask if they haven't already or aren't thinking
Yeah.
about it, right?
It's such a common question. In fact, we had a client come in last night and they've done very well. They have a lot of money, but they spend a lot. And
Mm,
everyone's different.
yep.
Everyone, you don't need a lot of money to retire, but it depends on how much you spend, right? So even with those people that come in with 5, 6, 7, $8 million, if they're spending 350, 400,000 a year, that's a common problem for anybody. It depends on their spending. And so they have a lot of money, but they spend a lot, and they were really worried. That's their major concern was, Dave, we don't want to run out of money. And
Yeah.
so, it really depends on what is your lifestyle, what are your expenses, what are your income sources, and we walk through those different key factors that are going to impact your savings and financial security.
Hmm. Yeah, and there are a lot of different factors that do affect these things, and that
Yeah,
is why you need to work with a financial services professional. And I'm not going to name names, but I know a
absolutely.
guy, David Negi, who could help you,
Right.
right?
You got a guy.
Yeah, David Negi. So, Dave, when we're talking about this, obviously, retirement planning, like you say, it isn't one size fits all. And
Yeah.
that is where SRS Wealth Management comes in. And if our listeners and viewers out there have a question during the show or say, hey, I want to make sure I'm not making costly mistakes, or I want to figure out when I can retire comfortably. How can they get a hold of you in your office to set up that no charge, no obligation consultation?
Just call the office, 619-460-9433, or go to our website, srswealthmanagement.com, and you can schedule an appointment right through the website, or you give us our call. Any one of my team members would be happy to get you on our calendar.
All right, that sounds great. Now, how do we answer this question? How much do I need to retire?
Well, you got to start by evaluating your current spending habits. I think, when I have clients do that, a lot of them say, we really didn't even know what we were spending. They
Sure.
have an idea, but when you really sit down and go through and do a budget, and then, maybe there's something coming up where you have to put a new roof on the house. Maybe you're going to want to buy a new car. We have to, kind of make sure we include any of those future spending needs that we might need, and look at, essentials like household food, right? Healthcare, travel, hobby, entertainment, and break down what we're going to spend in retirement. That's where we start. We need to know, number one, what are your monthly expenses going to be month after month, year after year, until you're both gone. So that's where you want to start.
Sure. And that's a good starting point, is figuring out where you're at. Nobody likes the B word. It's a dirty word, budget, right? Budget is a dirty word, but figuring out what your current spending habits are, watching what you spend, and maybe doing it over, at least if you're not already doing it and have a handle on exactly what you spend in each category and what you need to live on each month, do it for about 3 months, right? I
Yep,
mean, you've
3
told me
months.
this before.
Yep,
And once you do it for 3 months, you can kind of look at, okay, here's the average of what we spend on this, this, and this.
yep,
Certain things will be more in retirement, certain things will be less. That'll give you a good starting point. And that's what you normally look for when you meet with people, correct?
exactly.
Yeah.
And most people that I meet with, they spend pretty much in retirement. They're going to spend what they're spending today. So figure for most people, at least 70-80% of your pre-retirement income is what you're going to need to maintain your lifestyle. I can't hear you.
And some people are going to need more, David.
Oh
Sorry,
yeah,
I had my mic on mute because I had
that's
to clear
okay.
my throat. But I'll tell you, some people are like, I don't want to take a pay cut in retirement. Well, the 70 to
Mhm.
80% rule is because of a lot of factors, right?
Yeah,
Because some people look at their overall, hey, I make this much a year, but they're paying into things that they won't have to continue to pay into out of that money.
exactly.
But I think a lot of other people are like, I want to retire and buy a brand new RV,
Yep.
one of
I
those
just
big
had a
buses.
client do that.
Yeah. And that's expensive, isn't it?
Well, it depends. They bought
Yeah.
one that was around 30-40,000, but some of those really nice diesel pushers, they get up 100-200,000.
Oh,
So
easy.
again,
Yeah.
depends on your budget. But
Yeah.
no, I agree, right? What I tell people is whatever you're spending now is probably what you're going to spend in retirement.
Yeah.
So, if you're making $400,000 a year, you're probably not spending $400,000 a
Right.
year. So, but some people, they don't have it, they haven't saved enough. So we may have to adjust your lifestyle, right?
Sure.
You may need to downsize, or maybe we don't do 3 trips a year. Maybe we only do 2 trips a year. But that's why it's so important to get on the phone, give me a call. Let's get together. Let's look at, what are you spending? What are your retirement goals? What are your dreams? What are your needs? What are your values? And then we can put together a written plan, to make sure that your expenses align with your expected income sources.
Yeah. Yeah. And my wife and I are at the point that we're excited about downsizing. We've started it now, right? We're a
Yeah.
ways off from retirement yet, but we've started the process. We are literally this spring renting a dumpster, and we're clearing out. We raised 3 children. We've been married 30 years, lived in the same house for 28 or of those years, almost, and we raised 3 kids there, pets. So we've got a lot of stuff that we've accumulated, right?
Yep.
So, and I've talked about this on the show before. We're going to downsize, get rid of it, maybe move to a 1-level home where we can age in place. And we're going to start modifying. We've already started modifying our spending habits, cutting
Yep.
out unnecessary spending. And actually, we feel good about it. We
Yeah.
feel better than
It does
ever.
feel good to purge.
It really does feel good to purge,
Yeah, I'm not
right?
a fan of moving. I've moved about 5
Oh, me
times in the
either.
last 10 years. And the only good thing about moving is that you get rid of all that stuff that's just accumulating.
Junk that you don't use ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of that. You can come over and help if you want.
Sure. If you buy the pizza and beer, I'll come help.
That's the kind of guy you are, actually.
Yeah,
I knew you'd say that, so that's good. But yeah, adjust your lifestyle to fit your retirement income, right? I mean, that's good.
absolutely.
So, what else do we need to do to know how much we're going to need in retirement and make sure we're ready?
Well, the next step is, and again, we go through this in that first meeting. We're going to look at, what income sources do we have?
Sure.
Right. So you've got Social Security, pensions. We want to make sure that we're taking those pensions at the right time. The same with Social Security. A lot of pensions have a survivor benefit. We need to know what the payout options are, what the taxation of those are going to be. And then we want to look at your retirement accounts. Do you have a 401k, IRA, Roth? And we want to put together a strategy to make sure that we're withdrawing for those accounts properly. And we really want to avoid penalties and, most importantly, taxes. A lot of what we do revolves around proper tax strategies to make sure that if we've got dividends, we've got real estate income, rental income, we want to make sure that we align that with the 401k, the IRAs, the pensions, and Social Security to make sure that we're taking it at the right time and that we avoid very expensive mistakes when it comes to taxes and or penalties for early withdrawals, depending on what the asset is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And obviously taxes play a big role, but when you started off that list of income sources, you mentioned Social Security.
Uh-huh.
Let's just briefly, I know we've done whole shows on this, but that is the basis of any solid retirement income plan, and it's important to
Yeah.
get it right, isn't it?
Absolutely. Social Security on average makes up 65% of household incomes in retirement. So for many people, it's the foundation of their retirement. And it's very important to make sure that you meet with a professional. We have an 18-page Social Security report that we, again, give to everyone that comes in for their first meeting. In that second meeting, we'll give you that report, no obligation, no cost. We'll tell you exactly when to take it. If you take it early, what it would cost you. If you wait till 70, what you're going to get. When one of you pass away, what your spouse will lose. So we really dive into Social Security pretty extensively, far more than most advisors do.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I know that you do that because it's not like you're personally making any money off helping people with their Social Security income. You don't personally gain from that, but it's part of their overall financial and retirement planning, and you've got to maximize it. And I think it's great that you've helped so many people with that.
Well, and that kind of leads into the next topic, right? You know, everyone nowadays is saying that they do holistic retirement planning. And I have clients come in all the time for a second opinion and they'll say, "Oh yeah, my guy does or my girl does holistic planning." But when we really dig down and we look at their plan, they don't have a living trust or they haven't updated it in 10 years. They don't have a tax strategy. No one's ever talked to them about making sure that you have a plan in the event that someone slips and falls in your hot tub. Do you have an umbrella policy? Do you have long-term care? Have you planned for it? So unfortunately, a lot of advisors out there talk about holistic planning, but most people are not really getting holistic planning. So it's more than just about having a strategy for savings or the market. It's looking at the whole picture to make sure that we've planned for inflation, we plan for taxes, we've planned for unexpected expenses. We want to make sure that we regularly review the plan and we adjust when things change or things come up that we didn't plan for. And then obviously diversifying the portfolio,
Yeah.
making sure that, we've guaranteed income. I asked this question a lot at client last night. I said, what if we could put together a plan that we made sure your income came in month after month, year after year, no matter what happened in the market? If I could guarantee your income until you both die, how would that change the way you feel? And they both were like, "Oh my goodness."
Yeah.
That would change immensely. We're
So a
so
game
stressed right
changer.
now.
Yeah.
It's a game changer.
They
And
sleep well at night. It's the
that's
swan plan,
exactly what
right?
they said. We would eliminate all the stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there are ways to build income for retirement that will be there. That's important. And it's important to understand the pros and cons and limitations to the different strategies. And there are so many, and which one is going to best work for you? What works best for one client or set of individuals is not necessarily what's going to work the best for another, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's so important. So, you have to have strategies. You have to have strategies for Social Security timing, and then I don't think you've mentioned yet. Some people may want to work in retirement. That might be part of having a comfortable retirement, right?
Yeah. Well, and a lot of my clients, they don't necessarily want to do what they're doing now, but they want to contribute. They don't want to just sit around the house or, after a while you've done all the bucket list stuff and they want to help out. So we have to make sure that, if you're working while you're retired, that we want to manage withdrawals from accounts and we want to be careful about taxes, Social Security. There's IRMA rules. There's all different things that we have to pay attention to if we're going to have income in retirement, and making sure we have a tax efficient strategy.
Yeah, that's going to be important. So, the basis of all this is building a comprehensive retirement plan uh, in advance of retiring,
Yep.
it's more than just having a savings. People say I have a 401k or an IRA or a pension. I'm good,
Yeah.
but
Well, and you said it right, Tony. You want to not only do you want to have a written plan that details withdrawals, taxes, inflation, if I'm still working, Social Security. But we want to make sure that we are constantly reviewing that plan and updating the plan. Because one thing that we know for sure, you go back 10 years and look at your life, it was very different than it is today.
oh sure.
Retirement's no different.
Hmm.
10 years from now, things are going to be very different than they are today. And so we want to make sure that not only do we plan for that now, but as things evolve, that we're constantly working with our clients to update the plan and
Sure.
to change the plan based on their goals and needs and where they're at today.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned inflation. Luckily, there's cost of living adjustments built into Social Security. But I know, David, that you factor in inflation increases
Yep.
into your retirement income plans, right?
Yeah. And we want to under promise and over deliver.
Yeah.
So when I build a plan, I put in 3% inflation because right now that's about what it is.
Hmm.
And so I want to make sure that if we've got high inflation, not only now but into the future, that my plan is going to work no matter
Yeah.
what the market does, no matter what inflation does, no matter what taxes do. And so, if you come into the office, we'll put together a written plan for you again at no charge.
All right. Well, I think that's great. And that leads me to our next point, which is why working with a financial advisor, uh, Dave Negi, why that matters, why that's so important. Why is that important?
Well, I have people that come in all the time that are doctors, lawyers, CPAs, and they know what they know, but what you don't know is what you don't know about retirement. And that's our job. We help people retire every single day. And so you only get one shot at it. We want to make sure that your plan is built solid, that no matter what happens, we've already prepared for that. So you definitely want to work with a professional. It's one thing to build your assets. The biggest challenge you're going to have in retirement is turning those assets into reliable income month after month, year after year, until you're both gone.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fantastic. Now, my key takeaways from what you've been saying, David, your retirement number is going to depend on your expenses, your lifestyle, income sources, having a structured withdrawal and investment strategy that you've been talking about. And
Yep.
that's going to be crucial for financial longevity. Nobody wants to run out of money in retirement. And then maximize Social Security and your other sources of income.
Mhm.
So, how can our listeners do this? What's our call to action for our listeners today? How can they get a hold of you? How can they get their plan in place?
Well, give us a call, 619-460-9433. Go to our website, srswealthmanagement.com. You can learn all about what we do for people and how we do it. And you can also schedule your free complimentary first strategy session with me and my team, where we get to know your situation at srswealthmanagement.com.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, Dave, great show today. It's really important. People want to know how much they're going to need for retirement. They need to have that plan in place. And again, just pick up the phone, give Dave a call. Dave, I know you love hearing from our listeners and viewers, and another great show. I mean, I can't believe we started off the show talking about fainting goats and cow tipping. I mean, we've come such a long way today.
We
You
really
always
have.
manage
We
to
really
bring
have.
me. I'm here to try to side rail us, derail the action, but you always get us back on track. I love
Well, you give me too much credit sometimes.
that.
We're a good team, my
Super
friend.
Dave. That's your new nickname, Super Dave. All right. Thanks, Dave. And listeners, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of the Retirement Roadmap with our host, David Negi.